Well, welcome to Christ and Culture. This is Pastor Jeff Short, your Bible teacher and cultural analyst and commentator. And today we've got a article coming from New York State, Jamestown, New York. And this, when I read this, I thought to myself, this pretty much summarizes the state of public school education in the United States. The dismal state of public education in the United States. The lack of authority in the public schools, the lack of discipline among students in public schools, the cowardly administrators, the cowardly officers who are in charge of the school systems, and how parents are skirting their responsibility of teaching discipline to children, and how whenever there is an incident of discipline in the schools, parents often cry out to the media, "Oh, this is terrible. Someone disciplined my child and I want them fired." And so this is a mess. It's a snake pit of just corruption. And I'd like to go over this article to underscore that. And it should cause any parent to hesitate and stop and think long and hard about sending your child to public schools. Because, again, public school is a corrupt mess right now. And I'm aware that there are probably pockets of public schools that are better than others, but the current status quo of the public schools in the United States is just dismal. And this is sort of an epitome of what is taking place in public schools all over the country every day. So let's cover this, and hopefully I'll be able to explain this and react to this from a Christian perspective. I'm trying to bring a biblical perspective on what is taking place in our public schools, and hopefully we can change this. Hopefully we can reform this. I'm not sure it can be reformed, but hopefully it can be reformed, because it's going to take a revival of sorts to reform. The headline is Falconer, that's a school, district, village in New York State. Falconer teacher resigns. It should be resigns. Falconer teacher resigns after allegedly hitting student. Again, this is a product of the public schools where the newspaper editor or writer cannot even spell correctly. Falconer teacher resign after allegedly hitting students. This is probably the result of a student at the Post-Journal newspaper having gone through public school and they never learned how to read or write properly. So I'm going to have to correct this for us listeners and viewers. Falconer teacher resigns after allegedly hitting student. Not Falconer teacher resign after allegedly. No, it is wrong grammar, bad grammar, and this again is what is taking place in public schools. They're not teaching grammar, they're not teaching English, they're not teaching the basic fundamentals of education. They're emphasizing stupid, foolish things like DEI, equity and diversity and inclusion, and liberal leftism, wokeism in the schools, indoctrination, LGBTQ ideology, and so on and so forth. All this foolishness that has nothing to do with education. So let's get into the article. Let's get past the headline, that bad grammar headline, and let's jump into what the actual article reads. It says, a Falconer social studies teacher and former athletic director has submitted a resignation after allegations that he physically struck a sixth grade student. So here's a situation where a teacher touched a student or disciplined a student, or he didn't just go up to a student and punch a student. He didn't just go up to a student and slug a student, hit a student for no reason. There there was a reason why he touched the student. It's a 6th grade student. Now, a 6th grade student is a junior high student in most, I think, school districts in the United States. A 6th grade student is a junior high student. And they're getting into what? This would be a 12th grader? No, a 9th grader, or they're getting into that age where they actually can be fairly tall, and they start growing. And a 6th grader can be a problem. They're not like the small children, like, for example, a kindergartner or a 1st grader or a 2nd grader. They're not just more cute than anything or rambunctious. These a 6th grader can actually do damage. They are probably around 10, 11, 12 years old, and they can do damage. So this is not a situation where you're dealing with a small child. You're dealing with a near teenager. And I do not see the description of the child. I do not see the race of the child, which does make somewhat of a difference, unfortunately, sadly, in our country. And while there is no mention at all as to the ethnicity of this child, we do know that there are certain demographics that are more violent and more undisciplined than other demographics. For example, you would probably not see an Asian, Chinese, Japanese, Korean student misbehaving in school. It's just that their parents don't allow it in the home. But then you would expect other certain demographics to be very violent and be very misbehaving in the classroom. And that's all I'll say about that. Following an investigation from the school, the decision was made that charges will not be pressed at the request of the parents. However, the teacher will not be returning to the school. So what did this teacher do that forced him to resign? Let me scoot this over here a little bit so we can read the article. What did this student or the teacher do that made it evident that the school system wanted him to resign? Here we go. On January 27th, between 8:38 and 9:22 a.m., students at David Nelson's social studies class. So they're naming this teacher. They're doxing this teacher. They're outing this teacher. They're going to put focus on him, give him his name, and talk all about him. But they won't talk about the family of the child who was acting up in class. They won't dox the family. They won't dox the student, but they will dox this teacher and ruin his life. So that's just something to keep in mind. Students in David Nelson's social studies class were allegedly throwing around a squish ball. So there were students in the class who were throwing a ball around in the classroom, which is obviously wrong, which is obviously a no-no. Every kid should know that you can't throw a ball around in class because you'll hit somebody or you'll disrupt class, and it's just not part of learning. It's something for the playground. It's something for outside. It's something for recess time. Obviously, that's so apparent. Despite repeated attempts from Nelson to stop them. Okay, so he had told the students, stop doing that, put the ball down, get back in your seat, stop distracting class, stop doing this. He gave them a verbal warning, and it says, amid this frustration, Nelson allegedly went up and slapped a student in the back of his left shoulder. So slapped a student on the back, not in the face, he didn't strike his head, he didn't strike his face, he didn't punch him in the stomach. He slapped a student on the back. because the student wouldn't stop throwing this ball and disrupting class. So this teacher came up to the disruptive student and slapped him on the back. Okay, what's the problem? What's the problem? I don't see any problem. The student was ignoring his commands. And in the classroom, the teacher is in charge. The teacher is the authority. Students are brought to the school by their parents. They agree that the parent is going to hand off the student to the teachers and the administrators. And now the teachers and the administrators are in charge of the student, not the parents. So it's sort of a delegation of responsibility. In the home, the parents have the right to control the environment. They have the right to tell the students what to do. Their children have to listen to their parents. They cannot just keep throwing a ball around in the house, or in the case of the classroom, they cannot keep throwing the ball around in the classroom, disrupting the class. That's not the place for the ball. The teacher acting on behalf, we assume, presumably, on behalf of the parents, is maintaining discipline, goes up to a student and slaps him on a shoulder. What is the offense? Well, the newspaper is going to be partner to this mayhem, and they say there were roughly 13 other students present in the classroom at the time of the incident, many of whom would quickly report the occurrence to administrative staff. So the students are going to go running to the administration and saying, there was a teacher that touched a student. There was this teacher, our social studies teacher, slapped this student on the back. So they're all snitches, and they're all cooperating with this rebellious student. There's no question when the scenario is presented the way it is here in the paper that this student or a couple students were acting unruly, undisciplined. They were out of control. They were not listening to the teacher. They were not obeying his instructions. And so he had to get up. And finally, in order to bring order to the classroom, he slapped a student on the left shoulder. So what? What is the problem? He didn't hit the student with a stick. He didn't poke the student with a sharp object. He didn't shove the student down or throw the student across the classroom. He slapped the student on the back of his left shoulder. Okay. But it looks like everyone wants to blow this up into a major incident and actually ruin this person's life, this teacher's life. This is why, if you want to be a teacher in the public school system, you should probably rethink your career plans. Who wants to work under an environment, just like the police today, as the criminal and the perpetrator can say to you anything you want if you're a policeman and abuse you in every way and spit in your face and lie about you and curse you and act just disruptive as possible. But if the policeman at one moment in the encounter with the perpetrator does one little thing that could be questioned, his career can be over and he can go to jail and the judge can throw him in the jail. And it sounds like that's what the public schools are becoming as far as teachers are concerned. The classroom can be in total disruption. Students can be doing anything they want. Chaos can reign. But you try to bring order into that chaos and you can be charged with something. Your career can be ended. Or you could even go to jail. Yeah, there's something wrong with that. Big time wrong. It says, following the incident, the student was escorted to the nurse's office. Oh, okay. Where a red mark was observed and photographed in the school officials, said school official. So there was a red mark on his shoulder. Okay, again, my question is, so what? There's a red mark. From a Christian perspective, the Bible teaches spare the rod, spoil the child for parents. If you're a parent and your student is and your child, I should say, in the family context, is disruptive and disrespectful and is disobeying you, you have every perfect right, according to God Almighty, from His Word, to spank that child, to discipline that child. You don't punch the child in the face. You don't break their bones. You don't do them bodily injury. But you are allowed to lay a hand on that child in spanking. Of course, yes, in the Bible it says a parent has the perfect right to administer a little bit of pain, a little bit of corporal punishment in order to get that child in line, okay? Now, when the parent brings their child to the school, they are delegating that authority to the teacher or the administration. So if there is a student that is trying to hit or beat up some other student and the teachers or administrators try to break it up, and the student slaps or punches the teacher is allowed to discipline that child by pushing or even slapping that child in some part of the body, I don't know, not to hurt them, but to give them a warning and to bring order to the situation. You are delegating that to the teacher. But not according to the official policy now in the public schools, which is one of the problems. It says this. So they made a big deal about this. Oh, there was a red mark. Oh, and they photographed it. This is like a crime scene. Yeah, right. Now, I don't know what the mark looked like. I am guessing that there was a red mark that was visible. I don't think there was any damage done to the student. There was no damage done to the child. He didn't have to go to a hospital. He didn't have to go to emergency. There was no actual physical damage done to the student. But it looks like the school made a big deal about it, and they take pictures, and this is terrible. The teacher touched a student. Without any context, they're not explaining, well, yeah, because there was a problem. There was a problem of order in the classroom, and the teacher was trying to bring order to disorder. The student's parents stated the child then spent time talking to the guidance counselor after being visibly shaken by the incident. Oh, so the student was not being talked to by the administration for the disruption and the disorder in the classroom that this student was causing. No, they weren't talking to the administrators about that problem. They were trying to counsel the student because supposedly this student was traumatized by the incident. Yeah, I don't buy that. I totally don't buy that. That sounds like a victimization scenario where the student is now trying to claim that he was this innocent little child sitting along doing his studies in his classroom, and this mean old social studies teacher came up and just slapped him on the back. No, I don't buy it. I'm very skeptical of the student's response. I'm very skeptical of the parents' response. And I'm really disappointed by the administrator's response of this school. And I really do feel bad for this social studies teacher who had to go through all of this just to do his job. And it says he was visibly shaken by the incident. Really? Oh, really? When you're disobeying your teacher and throwing a ball around the classroom and disrupting and making disorder in the classroom, and then the teacher comes by and slaps you on the back, you're bothered by that? No, I don't buy it. This student realized that he could get out of trouble by playing the victim, and he did. At this time, the parents stated the student is well and has been able to calm down since the occurrence. Oh, okay. Well, great. We were all worried about him. No, I wasn't worried one bit about that student. And the parents are playing along with the victim card. What the parents should have said when they came to the school, they should have gone to their student, their child, and said, what were you doing that made the teacher get up from his desk and come over to you and discipline you? What were you doing? And if the student then tells, oh, I was throwing a ball around and I was disobeying the teacher's commands and I was not listening to him and I was disrupting the class, then the parents should have told the students, well, you got what you deserved, and sided with the teacher. That's what should have happened. And said to the administration, the teacher was only doing what was bringing order to the classroom. And in his eyes, he needed to do something to stop the disorder because the student was totally ignoring him. But they didn't do that. This is why you should never send your kids to public schools. I'm sorry. But this whole twisted scenario, this whole disruption, you're rewarding the disruption. There is nothing in this report that says anything about this student being disciplined for disrupting the classroom. And everything about the student receiving discipline by the hands of a teacher. And now the teacher's in trouble, and the teacher is basically had to leave the school. And the administration basically told him he had to leave. So in other words, the disruptor, the rebellious child, the undisciplined child, and the negligent parents for not teaching their children proper discipline, they're the ones rewarded in the scenario. And the disciplinarian, the person trying to bring order into chaos, he's dismissed. Yeah, don't send your kids to public school. This is the kind of nonsense foolishness that you get in the public schools. All over the world, all over the Western world at least. Nelson was quickly placed in administrative leave by the district pending an investigation. Superintendent Stephen Penhallow would tell the police that Nelson openly admitted to striking the student. Right, yeah. He has nothing to hide. The student was not listening to him. The student was defying him, challenging him. I dare you to do something. And he came up to the student and slapped him on the back. The back! Slapped him on the back. Think about that. That's so harmless. Penhallow immediately contacted the parent of the student, setting up a meeting to discuss the matters. Were they going to talk about the student's unruly behavior? No, they were going to talk about how wrong it was for the teacher to touch the student. Yeah, this kind of cowardly, pathetic administration. The student told the father, right after alleged altercation, that Nelson stated, I am setting an example for those who don't listen. Meaning he's going to go hard on the teacher. Penhallow stated that Nelson denied making any such comment. Later on January 29th, Ellicott Police Detective Daniel Layton spoke to the father of the student who did not wish to pursue charges. Are you kidding me? So long as the teacher did not return to the school in any capacity. So in other words, the parents blackmailed the school district and the principal and everyone at school into saying, well, I won't press charges against this teacher or touching my child as long as you get rid of him. See how mixed it up it is? It's all mixed up. It's all twisted. It's perverted. The student should probably have been removed from the classroom and kicked out of school for a week or two. Instead, this teacher now has to leave. The next day, Layton spoke to Penhallow and Nelson and advised Penhallow to contact him if or when Nelson submitted a resignation. On Tuesday, Penhallow informed Layton and that Nelson had tendered his resignation to be valid as of April 1st. Nelson has not and will not be returning to the school at all before this date, with parents expressing satisfaction with the result. With the parents. Yeah, so these neglectful parents fail to teach their son discipline, basic discipline. They fail to teach their student how to respond properly to authority. The teacher is the authority in the classroom, obviously, just like a captain of a ship is the authority on the sailing vessel. So when the teacher says, stop throwing that ball in classroom, this is a classroom, we're learning here, not playing, and the student fails to listen, just ignores the teacher, challenges the teacher, try to do something. The teacher comes over, tries to take the ball away, slaps the student on the back. All of a sudden, the teacher now is removed, and the student is somehow vindicated as the innocent victim. This is why you really need to think about not sending your kids to public school, because this is the environment they will be subjected to. This corrupt, twisted, perverted environment. What should have happened is the student should have been brought to the office, talked to by the principal, and said, why didn't you listen to the teacher when he said stop throwing the ball? And he should have been the one in trouble. The teacher was just trying to bring order out of chaos and discipline into the classroom, and now he's fired, basically, essentially, forced to resign. Yeah. That is not an environment for learning. That is not the environment you want your children exposed to. When rebellious, insubordinate, disruptive students are allowed to walk free with no consequences, and the people trying to bring order to chaos and discipline into disruption, when they're the ones that are punished by the system. And the parents, the neglectful, irresponsible parents are the ones who blame the system and blame the teacher for their problems with their child. Yeah, no, you want to stay away from public schools these days. It wasn't always like this. When I went to public schools, you couldn't get away with that. And you certainly wouldn't see a teacher fired for touching a student when the student was acting defiantly and unruly and disorderly in the classroom. You wouldn't have the teacher being punished when the student needed to be punished and disciplined. So, just another indication of the state of our public schools. It's an ugly sight. Well, we'll see you back next week. God bless.